Hey everyone, this is Rob. We're doing something a little bit different today. We're not doing the weekly market wrap-up. We're instead bringing you a very important conversation with a House representative and a senator from the state of Florida and our friend Daniel Diaz of Citizens for Sound Money, talking about the 4 bills that are in Florida to move gold as money in the state. We're going to be talking to them about why they're supporting this, how much support we've gotten, and how great this has been for them to get involved. We believe we're really close to pushing this across the finish line. So please stay tuned to some very important messages for making gold money again in the state of Florida, which we think will spur other states to do the same as well. Florida will be the 5th state in the union to do this, but being a big one, we think it will spur others on. Stay tuned for a very, very important conversation.
Welcome to Gold Silver Pros.
Hey everyone, this is Rob Kientz with 𝙁𝙊𝙇𝙄𝙊𝙍𝙀, and I'm here with my good friend Daniel, who is working with me and Citizens for Sound Money in trying to get gold as money again in the Sound Money Act. Of course, you've heard him on the Twitter Spaces that we do every Monday from 10:30 a.m. Central Time to 12 p.m. And we're also joined by Senator Rodriguez and Representative Banks from Florida, who are here to talk about the Sound Money Act and the bills that now have bill numbers and are now out in Florida that we feel very encouraged about, and all the progress that's been made and why that they're interested in this. Daniel, you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about your efforts there with these 2 Congress people?
Absolutely. Thank you, Rob, for having us on the show and those introductions. I'm here with Representative Bankson, and we have Senator Rodriguez in Miami right now. She'll be coming up to Tallahassee tomorrow. And we have been doing some amazing work here in the state of Florida. We have Citizens for Sound Money. We met with 64 representatives and senators. And Representative Bankson has been doing his own rounds with some representatives on both sides of the aisle. We not only have Republican support, but this is a bipartisan bill. We have Democratic support as well. And I'm really excited for what we're doing. I'm going to let Representative Banks and Senator Rodriguez just share a little bit about what we've been doing here and why they both decided to sponsor this very important bill, the Sound Money Act.
All right. Well, I'll go ahead and kick off here. I'm very excited that this thing found me. We know there's an instability in our nation right now, but especially fiscally, and people are just kind of grasping at straws. What we came through with COVID and the influx into the money supply just really upended things. We've known for a long time that the dollar is not secure. And obviously, when it left that gold standard, it had nothing behind it. And I referred to it as Dumbo's magic feather. It's believed to have a power that's there, but there's really nothing backing it anymore. And so to have the Gold and Silver Act that our forefathers saw fit to put this back door there to give states the right to bring sound money again. I'm very excited about this and very excited to work with Senator Rodriguez. She, of course, has a wonderful track record there. She's a superstar on that side of the aisle. And Senator, I'm so glad you could join us from a little bit warmer down in Miami, but we'll see you soon up here. But I just want to go ahead and give you the floor here and let you just weigh in on this.
Thank you, Representative. And I think, like you, I think this bill found me as well. When Daniel and his colleagues, approached me about this legislation, about sponsoring it in the Florida Senate, I couldn't have been more excited. I think the future of our country depends on this type of legislation. I think, as you stated, our deficit and everything that's happening is basically just spiraling out of control, in terms of all the monies that are owed. It literally is like now in the trillions, like 1 trillion every 3 months or something. Like I heard something about that yesterday, and I was like, what does the future hold for our children and our grandchildren if they want to stay in this country, and how can we change the course of where we're going? And I think this type of legislation is a game changer for the direction of our country, and it can only be done on a state by state basis, which is why I'm very excited to be sponsoring this along with Representative Bankson.
Senator Rodriguez, thank you so much for your reply. When did you first get aware that this bill was being circulated, or that we're considering doing this? Was this something that happened recently, or is this something that you had heard discussions about for some time beforehand?
I actually just heard about it a few months ago. It wasn't something I had been planning for a long time. Sometimes ideas, they don't need to be percolating for a long time. They just kind of, come up, and if they make sense, you run with them. And it's not common for bills to get over the finish line the first year you propose them. But I have a feeling this one is going to make it over the finish line in its first attempt. So that's how popular it is amongst my colleagues. And as Daniel stated, the team has met with the vast majority of House and Senate members, which is half the battle. It's just having those face-to-face meetings, explaining why the importance of doing this type of legislation, and it's been received very, very well received in both by Republicans and Democrats alike.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because having both sides of the aisle involved in this, I think, is crucial for support. We see so often in politics, and I'm just a layman, I'm not a politician, but from the outside in, we see so often party votes or party line votes, especially at the national level, and not necessarily having people from both sides interested in this. Why do you suppose there's interest on both sides from both the Democrats and the Republicans?
Because I think inflation affects everyone. It's not, it doesn't just affect Republicans or Democrats or independents. Everybody's pocketbook is being hurt right now. And so, you're looking at, what better than gold and silver, to back up our nation's currency. There's really nothing more secure than that. I mean, when we stepped away from that, as was mentioned earlier, it's kind of like you go into a free fall. Like what protects you? What's the backup? What's there? There's really nothing there. But if we bring this standard back, I think it'll give people a lot of security and a lot of it'll just change the trajectory of our country.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you note that, because gold and silver we were on a bimetallic standard at one point, and it was money. And we did have silver in our coinage up through 1964, technically through 69 if we look at the candy half dollars. And even during World War II, in nickels, they ran out of nickels, so they started putting silver in the nickels. So all of our coin issuance at one point in time was based upon gold and silver. I think in 1971, it was sort of the end of the gold standard. Nixon took us off. A lot of European nations were sort of calling us on our money printing and taking that gold back and exchanging dollars. And so we've been on this pure fiat system for a while. And I think we've seen, what happens there with deficits and things. Representative Banks, what's your view on this? How did you get involved in this, and why is this bill important to you as well?
Well, as you said, this is real money. And for me, I want to give a shout out to 𝘎𝙁. He's the first one that approached me. He has a firm called the Timothy Plan that just helps people to be able to make investments according to their values. But he found the book, or actually brought forward Kevin Freeman. I want to just plug this book. I think every American ought to read this book. It's a very succinct way of bringing us where did we come from and how did we get here and what is the answer. So this is where this initially found me, as far as what is in the Constitution. This is a constitutional way that we can restore a gold and silver standard. It may not be national, but we can restore to the individual the right to have their own personal gold and silver standard. And as you mentioned, with the fiat money, this is something that it's a house of cards waiting to fall. And for the average American, if they understand that, what I love about this is your gold and your silver, that's yours. If there was some run on the bank and people say, oh, that can't happen. Well, we know the BRICS nations are coming after the dollar. It's very insecure at this point. And so, the fact that this is your value, this is in your account. If there is some type of a run on the bank, you can just sit back and sip some iced tea, because they're not running for your gold, your silver. It belongs to you. And so it brings back that stability factor. And that's what I love about it. And so I actually pulled together, we asked Kevin to come and do a presentation here. And that's where I met Daniel. And, to find out that this is a grassroots movement across this nation of like-minded people that know there's a problem, but we're not just going to simply sit back and let it happen. We want to do something about it. And I love this legislation. They tell us up here, don't fall in love with your bills. As the senator said, sometimes it takes more than one cycle to get it across the line. I said, well, then I'm in deep and abiding like. But the bottom line is we're not going to take the foot off the gas pedal on this. and we're seeing more and more support come together. This is not just bipartisan, it's nonpartisan, because money answers all things. It is an issue that everyone deals with. And again, as the senator said, this is for our children and children's children. If we don't have a sound fiscal policy, all of the other things that we see in Venezuela, we see in other nations, how fast that can just evaporate. And so this brings back a stability and a way to make it a liquid, a transactional property that creates the cash rather than the commodity. It saves us from the tax gouge on this, as anyone knows who got involved in crypto. It's just horrendous, and people didn't see that one coming. And so this is just a tremendous act that makes our gold and silver transactional and accessible, and frees us from the tax burden that is there. And I love it.
Yeah, and I just want to edify both Representative Bengtson and Senator Rodriguez on their reputation on both sides of the House and the Senate. Because when we were meeting with myself and a few other citizen lobbyists, we were meeting with the Democrats last week. They asked us who's sponsoring these bills. And I'm like, oh, Representative Bengtson and Senator Rodriguez, and the prime co's are Representative LaMarca and Senator Martin. And they're like, oh, those names, you got a lot of support. Those are very reputable people. I can get behind those bills, absolutely. And it's because of the reputation both Representative Bengtson and Senator Rodriguez have in the House and the Senate. I mean, it's amazing to see the type of support we're getting on both sides of the aisle.
And how amazing is it going to be, if this does end up getting passed, these bills? And by the way, we'll mention the bills. We have the House Bill 697 and 699 for those that are curious, and Senate Bill 750 and 752. But Daniel, in your opinion, and Representative Banks as well, how important is it that it gets passed in the state of Florida? Because I live in the state of Texas. We're a very big and influential state in national politics, and people look to us for a lot of things. And I would say California, New York, Texas, Florida are some of the bigger states that people follow. What type of impact do you think that it would make if this got passed in Florida? Would it affect some of these other states that may be sort of looking at the same thing? Because we know a lot of states have looked at this. What kind of effect would that have on some of the other states and saying, well, if Florida's doing it, maybe that's something that we need to seriously consider?
Well, Florida is the 15th largest economy in the world. And
if we were a country, we would be the 15th largest economy in the world. And again, we states look at one another and what's being done. We love things that are happening in Texas. I know Texas was moving forward on this. We know there are 4 states that passed the legal tender portion of this, and it takes all these aspects. So if we're able to do that, to me, it's just that first domino, and it gives credibility for other states. In fact, when we go and present these before committee, that's one of the things that different ones will ask. Who else has already passed this? So it just helps it get across the line. So I believe if we're able to do this, and I want this to get done, we're believing it's going to get done this session. I think it will be that domino effect that helps other states get it on across that finish line.
And just how timely that would be, Daniel, as we head in 2024, a lot of the big banking analysts from Goldman Sachs and Bank of America, and a lot of these guys are starting to predict a recession for the U.S. economy. How important is it that we get some money into the system at a time which Americans may be facing tightening wallets, and that inflation that Representative Banks has talked about has really affected our pocketbooks and the ability of the average person to go shop at the grocery store, and to pay their auto loan and their home loan with the declining purchasing power of the dollar that we have right now.
Yeah, as Senator Rodriguez, who she just sent us a text message, and there was some reception issues, so she apologizes for dropping off. But as Senator Rodriguez was saying earlier, this is not a Republican, Independent, Democrat issue. Everybody is feeling the effects of inflation, which is just a simple definition of inflation is the expansion of the currency supply. And the federal government, not just in the United States, but across the world, have been doing deficit spending and printing their currencies into oblivion. And this is why people are struggling. When I first started with Citizens for Money Lobby, we went to New Hampshire first because our chair is a former senator from the state. And at the hotel I was staying at, I was talking to the person at the front desk. She was telling me she has to work 3 jobs just to make ends meet. I asked her, when do you sleep? She doesn't. She actually missed her morning job sleeping in the parking lot over an hour and she works at Dunkin' Donuts, the hotel, and I forget the third job doing, I think, working at like a dry cleaning place. And it's horrible. This is a story across not just this country, but across the world. Inflation is robbing people of their purchasing power, and they're suffering for it. And having this bill that Representative Banks and Senator Rodriguez are pushing in Florida and across the country, if Florida passes this, it's going to reverberate not just across this country, but the world will know that America is coming back to the gold and silver standard because of patriots like Representative Banks and Senator Rodriguez.
Well, again, it speaks stability, and stability then brings economic progress. It begins to draw and bring that focus. And this is something that I'm really passionate for here in the state of Florida. How can we bring that which helps our economy? And of course, through our leadership with our governor, I mean, we were open for business. Everyone at the beginning didn't know what is this new thing with the whole COVID issue, but he turned around, followed the true science, and we were open for business. And so it's really brought an economic strength for us. And so putting this together on the tails of that, I think, again, is really going to point the way for others to follow suit. Gold and silver, it's real money. And I just love the stability that it creates. Of course, when the money supply, the dollars begin to suffer, it tends to propel the gold and silver value. And so those who hold it, this is what I love about it. You have this in your account, it can appreciate. And of course, we know it goes up and down. And here I'm talking to the expert here. So, thank you again for being an expert and helping people know. The average person, they're afraid because of a lack of knowledge. But the bottom line is having that gold and silver, the appreciation value through these struggling times will help them overcome the negative effect of this inflation that's killing their dollar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so important. A little bit about my own story, and the reason I got into this got into gold and silver, because I'm a Gen Xer. I'm 49. My generation wasn't really around with gold as money or even the gold standard. 1971 was 2 years before I was born. And it's something I talked to Ron on Ron's Basement about is, my generation and on, the millennials and the Gen Zers don't understand gold as money. They've never seen it before. Mm-hmm. And it's so important that we educate on money that is naturally regulated, money that can really, help people recapture inflation, which is what gold does. But my own education came about because there was 2009, February 1st, 2009, I was laid off from my job at EY. And I was the top, person at EY in my region in terms of running projects and things. I wasn't even a manager, but I was beating a lot of my senior managers. So I'd done very well. I was very fortunate to have done that. I got laid off and I had a new child, my second child, and a home that we just purchased. And I'm thinking, what the heck is going on? I did everything right. I went to school. I got my degrees. I'm working a really good job with a reputable firm. But it wasn't that Ernst & Young had done anything wrong or I had done anything wrong. It was the economy. That was back right during the height. It was actually the day I got laid off, February 1st, is what analysts call the height of the Lehman crisis, before it started abating and before, some of the policies and the things got relaxed. And so for me, it was that event that sort of woke me up, and I'm looking around going, what the heck is going on? I followed all the rules here. What's going on in and around my life? And that's when I had to make a change. And I know that so many people, Daniel, are now waking up and seeing this. Obviously, with Representative Banks and Senator Rodriguez, we have people at the state level now waking up. We have people waking up every day, and how important this is. It's really important that people educate themselves and understand the history of money and really educate themselves, on what's going on. And hopefully that will propel us forward to where we have choices, like in the state of Florida, protecting people that want to save in gold and silver once again.
Well, and again, when there's a lack of understanding about it, sometimes that fear just causes people to go backwards and trying to hang on to what they've held rather than letting go and grasping a hold of something new. This isn't replacing the dollar for those that are afraid, but it's creating a stability and an asset-backed currency in that effect. There are those that are afraid of, is this just another crypto? Absolutely not. This is something, again, that's based upon the sound money and bringing that stability for the individual. And we still use our dollars and operate with that, but we've got something of intrinsic value that's behind it. And so as people begin to warm to that idea, I like to say the future's coming, whether we like it or not. You can fear it or you can steer it. Yeah. And I'd rather be in the driver's seat. And that's what this does.
And for your audience, Rob, that's more traditional. This is something we experience on Ron's Basement. A lot of people are scared. The stackers are scared about anything digital. And I want the Floridians that are listening, the audience that are listening from Florida, even across the country, that they're going to be using the Florida bill as their Sound Money Act. We have specific language in there that, one, prevents any federal, state, or quasi-governmental agency from confiscating the gold or silver. The gold and silver is in a bailment relationship, meaning the state has no control or ownership over the gold itself. It's just warehousing it. And the electronic currency acts as a certificate of ownership or a claim check against that gold. And we also have very specific language on the gold itself being not being able to be used by the legislature for what's the word I'm looking for?
Not being able to be appropriated for something else.
Appropriations.
Okay.
Sorry,
I
I drew a blank. So we have anti-appropriations language in the bill as well. Thanks for that, Rob. You jogged my memory. I kind of just forgot. But yeah, we are very careful because we understand, we have Valorum and Goldback's general counsel on our legislative committee. In fact, Rob's on our legislative committee as well. He helped put some security language in the bill itself. And we are very cognizant of everybody's desire to use physical gold and silver. In fact, even Goldbacks and Valorum silverbacks. The way that we've drafted the language with Representative Bankston, it protects your ability to use. In fact, it strengthens your right as a stacker to use gold and silver in retail stores and so forth.
Yeah. And again, it's also you're able to do that between individuals. If two people wanted to make an agreement based upon gold or silver, they can do that, but it's not forced upon anyone. So it's really protecting liberty and giving the options to people. Why would we not give another tool? There may be some who don't want to use this. That's okay. But those that do, it empowers them. And what I love about this as well is we're protecting the privacy of this. That's why the two bills, the second bill just protects it from the sunshine law here in Florida that makes it public record. So it is private. We want to protect the privacy because a loss of privacy is a loss of liberty. So there have been some who were concerned about that. We're dealing with that aspect as well. And again, the bailment situation, this belongs to the individual. People really are already doing this with their dollars. And their dollar, when it began, the dollar was just symbolic of something behind it. Now there's just nothing behind it. Mm-hmm. So this is just the same. We use credit cards. We use debit cards. We've got some little mock-ups that we've done here to hand out to people that basically you have an account. As we make it transactional through this bill, you can take and load that value upon your debit card. You can slide that, and it's instantly sold at market value at that point. So the vendor doesn't have to worry, how many micrograms of gold do I have to keep, and where do I? It's none of that. It's a cash transaction. Again, saves us from the tax burden, and again, it makes it transactional. It gives freedom. All this does is just give to the people the options and the liberty.
And if merchants want to accept the electronic gold and silver, they'll be able to save between 200 to 400% on their fees, because the transactions from gold and silver to the merchant is only going to be between 20 to 100 basis points versus 2 to 4% with a credit card or debit swipe. So there are a lot of benefits, for bringing the electronic gold and silver to Florida and across the country.
Yeah, that's the benefit of having the blockchain, is that the blockchain itself, we're not saying this is Bitcoin. The blockchain is not the coin. The blockchain is really a digital ledger system and a transfer system. So think of it like linking your bank account to somebody else's via wire transaction, but without all of the fees that you're going to have. And then a little bit, a fee is charged just to support the running of that system. Also, Daniel, last thing, talk about how this is basically revenue neutral, in that the state of Florida is not going to have to charge a bunch of new fees, that the system itself basically is able to support itself, as we go along here. And it's not going to cost Floridians a lot of money to do this.
Yeah. So the way that the bills are written, and in Florida, we didn't specifically say blockchain. We're leaving it open so that any company, whether they're using blockchain technology or database like Glint, can RFP in, which means request for proposal. They can propose to be the electronic currency providers in Florida. Same thing with vaults. So Brinks, Lumens, any other vault, maybe even the Texas depository, could put in a request to be the provider of the depository in the state of Florida. But most blockchain and even Glint, they have fees associated for using any of their gold and silver transactions. I think Glint's at 0.5%. Kinesis is another company. I think it's like 24 to 45 basis points, and there's Load, same thing, that they're staggered. Those percentage points, basis points, would be split revenue with the states. So whatever those basis points are for using the transaction, which is cheaper than using a debit card for merchants, that revenue will be used, and that will be used to pay for the electronic currency, and also potentially covering the cost of vaulting the gold and silver with the companies that the state of Florida or any other state decides to contract with. So this would be a revenue neutral, even potentially a revenue generating system for the state, where they'll be receiving micropayments in gold and silver, building up the reserves of the states of Florida and so forth.
I got you. So any vendor can provide that solution. It just depends upon what the state ends up deciding. Okay, so last bit here. We're talking about getting this across the finish line. Daniel, I know you said on Spaces you think you're getting a lot closer. We've talked about the bill numbers. I gave those out. Representative Banks, how close do you think we are at this? Do you think that this could potentially pass this session? Do you think we're going to next session? You know, how far along are we there in Florida?
Well, again, there's no way to prognosticate that unless leadership specifically has tipped their hand. We know this is presidential election year, and you know the governor has to make very wise decisions in different things. But I love the fact that he is bold and innovative, that he thinks outside of the box in that sense. So we are getting positive indications from leadership, and you know, so I just believe that this is moving forward. We're at the beginning of the process, of course, but the bill is filed, it's in motion. We are getting a lot of the positive feedbacks from the different ones in the committees that we anticipate it will be placed before. And again, we're going to do our due diligence to make sure that it's ready. And then, of course, it will go up if it passes both sides, as I anticipate it will. We've got some strong support on the Senate side as well in leadership that it just gives us some good indication. So I think we've got a very good chance to see this cycle. And again, we'll keep the pedal down. We've one of the things what we've done is, you know, as you were just referring to, we've empowered the CFO to be able to make those decisions without it becoming a burden upon the state. I'm a real hawk when it comes to increasing taxes. You know, we want to keep those from burdening the taxpayer, especially right now with what's going on. This allows him to contract rather than recreate its own state depository. We can contract those things. You can seek the right vendors that will be the best and keep the fees down. And that's something that, again, we've seen our governor constantly doing those things. So I'm very excited about this. Yes, the beginning of the process, obviously January 9th is when we begin session. But we've got a running start, and I'm just very anticipating on this, that we're going to see it go across.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Daniel.
You've heard me on our show. I said when I first started lobbying the Sound Money Act in October, before we even met with Bankson, we met with Bankson right before we learned about the dinner. I was 50-50 on whether we were going to get it passed, because I just didn't know what the appetite was. After the first week, I went from 50% to 75%. After the second week in October, it went from 75 to 90%. I am personally favorable. I'm like at 99% certain this is going to get through, just because of the amount of positive feedback and just random people. There's a couple of floors in the 10th floor here at the cafe. I like asking other lobbyists, what are you pushing? I spoke to 3 lobbyists that were pushing some mental health care bills, and they asked me what I do. I'm like, oh, I'm executive director of C4SM. We're pushing the Sound Money Act that creates legal tender, creates a state depository, and makes gold and silver transactional. They absolutely loved it. And that's pretty much the reception we're receiving from legislator and constituents alike.
And that's the real key, the voters themselves letting their voice be heard. So we're just encouraging different ones. I spoke with one who early on was somewhat skeptical because he had a preconceived notion of what this was. And he's, you know, again, was saying, I really am not hearing from my constituents. So, but he began to open up to the idea there. The bottom line is, as we activate those who are out there, say, we want to see this. That's, you know, that's why we're here, is to represent the voice of the people. So having the voters let their voice be heard, that's one of the greatest things that will help move this across the finish line.
Yeah, and we need, as we have talked about on our show, we need grassroots involvement. We need constituents to reach out to their specific representatives and senators. And because if somebody from the Panhandle or Miami contacts you, yeah, that you represent the whole state, but what really matters is your constituents, because you represent them.
Yeah.
And that's what we need. We need your listeners who are from Florida to pick up the phone, or we'll have a link in this video. I'll send it to you to our Line Act campaign. You can go on that website, plug in your address, and it'll pop up your representative, your senator, and Governor DeSantis. And then you can just click one button, and it'll send an email to all three saying that you would like them to support the Sound Money Act.
Fabulous. Well, I wanted to thank all of you for your time. Daniel, always for your time and all of the work that you put in. This would not have come to fruition if you hadn't just hit the road and really made big concessions in your own life and taking this on for Citizens for Sound Money and doing all the legwork. Some of us, get involved in different ways. I try to do as much as I can part-time, but you've been that full-time for us. I wanted to thank you for doing that. This is so important. If this gets passed, Daniel, you deserve all of the credit for doing the legwork. I want to thank you, Representative Banks, for taking the time to come on the show, for our listeners, for taking the time to talk about this and to care. It really is nice, I think, for people to see, everyday people like me, to see people at the state level really care about us and care about what's going on in our lives and care about how things are helping us. A lot of people get disconnected and disenfranchised in this political system, but it's so important that you guys, are out there and representing the people. And I thank you so much for that. Of course, we also thank Senator Rodriguez for being on earlier. Sorry, we had connection problems, but we'll catch up with her again. But definitely her voice, in the Senate is very, very important. And the fact, Daniel, that you guys are working both sides of the political spectrum shows that there's unity in this. And I agree with you. I mean, it sounds 99%. We hope. We're going to cross our fingers. But you guys definitely are so important. But it's so important that we continue to get this message out, and we continue to get this message out. So for my viewers, I will put up the link that Daniel is going to send to me regarding finding your representative in the state of Florida. And also at the end of this video, I'll have a short note, and I'll put up the link to DonorBox, which is our fundraising website in which you guys can help support Citizens for Sound Money. This does cost money. It's very expensive. And I'll note that here in the last part of the video after we're done with this piece. And I'll put a link. And if you guys are willing to send certain amounts, I'm putting my own silver up for this for people that make donations. So we'll mention that here in a moment. But thank you so much, Representative Banks. Thank you so much, Daniel. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Rob.
And just one last thing. I don't want to take all the credit. If it wasn't for representatives and senators like Banks and Rodriguez, if I was out here every day knocking on doors and nobody wanted to take the bill up, it would have died. So this would not be possible without.
It's a teamwork. It's fun to get to carry that football,
Yeah,
but without the block, making that hole,
O-line
we're
right
running
here.
through it. So, yeah.
Well, as they say, teamwork makes the dream work.
We win as a team. America wins.
Yeah, exactly.
There we go. America's team. Oh, we got it. We got a new America's team. It's behind the sound money. My Cowboys fans and friends here in Texas may object to that, but I say, hey, this is money. This is bigger than just football. Okay.
Yeah. So
all right. Thank you guys so much. Representative Banks, would love to speak to you again in the future, and thank you so much for representing the people on this and really doing a great job. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks.
Hey, everybody, just to end up this video, I did promise that we would put up the donor box link for those of you that want to contribute to the push to the Citizens for Sound Money efforts to lobby the state of Florida to make gold money again, to build a state depository, and also to enable electronic access and transfer of that money using different techniques, and to protect all the consumers in Florida while doing this. It's very important that we have an alternative to the dollar fiat system and what we think is the upcoming central bank digital currency system for people to store their money safely in and to be able to spend it. And we're doing that by promoting laws passing laws that promote the use of gold as money, essentially. If you're interested in supporting, you can go to this link, donorbox.org. Below, we'll also have it in description, so you can just click on it. It's here on the banner at the bottom as well. That goes to my donor site, which sends the money over to Citizens for Sound Money, the nonprofit, which Daniel is executive director of, and we're matching. So if you do a $250 donation through my link, I will match it with a 1 ounce ape coin from Silverback Precious Metals. And if you do a $500 donation, I'll match it with a 5 ounce poured bar from our friends that provide those to us here in the store in Grapevine, Texas. That's 5 ounces poured 999 silver for those who donate 500, and a 1 ounce round ape Silverback Precious Metals coin for those who donate 250. I think we're giving away 20 of the coins for the 250 donations and up to 10 of the bars for the $500 donations. We've already had some people donate at both of those levels. And just to let you guys know, this coming Monday, when I'm back in the office, I will be sending those original silver packages out for guys that have made donations at that level, as we are tracking that. So the first set of mail will go out this coming Monday. Thank you so much for listening to the program. Thank you so much for your support. This is to help people not only in the state of Florida, but we think this will generate a movement across the United States. So it's already a movement, but we think it will give us legs, a lot more legs for this movement to make gold money again in each of the states. And if you're a gold stacker or you're somebody that believes in gold as money, this is the perfect legislation to finally get gold as money and hopefully to free up gold to trade at its true market price and to allow people to save in something that doesn't get devalued by the fiat dollar system. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it. Till next time, Thursday's video is coming up on the CBDC system. This is Rob Kientz with goldsilverpros.com.